Welcome to the Walk Around Podcast. Our goal is to share with you the insights, the skills, the processes, and the leaders that are influencing the automotive retail landscape today. I'm one of your hosts, Nick Funch, and as always, joined by Danny. Hey, Danny.
How's it going, Nick? Good to see you.
Good to see you. How about our guest today? Awesome conversation with Ed Sheehy. And I think it's much less about kind of the influence Ed's had today, but it's the influence Ed's had over kind of the Toyota business, certainly in the Southeast, over kind of his years with Southeast Toyota.
100%. I mean, we talked about, some of the things that he's seen, just his sight lines over the years, what's kind of stayed the same, what's changed, what he's looking forward to over the next year or so, and kind of what dealers can be thinking about as well as they prepare to close out this year and looking into 2022.
Yeah, and certainly he has sight lines, most recently serving as president of Southeast Toyota, but also kind of being involved with JM family and Southeast Toyota Distributors since the 90s. And so I think you'll find his perspective valuable. But I also love kind of that, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And there's some core secrets to continued success and development. And I think everyone will enjoy the conversation. So take a listen and welcome Ed Sheehy to the Walk Around Podcast. Welcome, Ed, to the Walk Around Podcast. We're glad you could join us today.
Thanks, Nick. Happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, exciting time for your life. I know you're kind of transitioning into a different experience, but I appreciate you joining us today to kind of explore how the industry has changed, what you've seen, some of your experiences there, and then what we should be thinking about as we start to look forward towards 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, sure. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So maybe to get started, I would just kind of start. The industry's evolved rapidly over the past 2 years, certainly. But as you kind of maybe even take a step back, what are some of kind of the bigger changes you've seen over kind of your experience in the automotive space?
Yeah, I think you look at what are the changes in over 37 or 38 years, there have been a lot. There have been some significant ones. The easiest one is technology in the cars themselves, right? There's a lot has changed from the early 80s when I got in the car business and what we were selling then to what we're selling now. The vehicles themselves are more computers than transportation. But beyond that, what are some of the other changes? I think the business has, the level of sophistication has amped up probably tenfold over time. I've seen dealers who have historically come up through the front end of the business, successful salesmen, save their money. Dealers now are starting to spend, and really this goes back maybe close to a decade. Dealers are spending a lot more time in the back end of the business. And it's really not the back end anymore. I mean, this is an area of the business, parts and service. You're getting 50% of your profitability out of what was in the past, or back at the very beginning of my tenure, maybe even an afterthought for some dealers. And we're seeing that's huge. And then I think where we've seen maybe the biggest impact to date is just the sophistication and the complication of dealership ownership structures. Back in the old days, I think the biggest level of complication is the owner, a corporation, or a partnership, and it was really an individual who was making that decision. And then in the early to mid 90s, along came AutoNation, and it's AutoNation 1.0 that very quickly morphed to 2.0, and then that was the first public company we saw come in, and now we have the publics, we have PE companies coming in. We're just seeing, we're seeing a lot of different ownership structures, and I think a lot of that is being driven by the fact that retail automotive and the historical return on cash is such a very exciting proposition for investors.
Yeah, I think kudos. It's that return on investment is hard to get anywhere. I think the other thing that's interesting, I was just reflecting, I believe in the most recent earnings call from AutoNation of all people, they spoke specifically around the growth of their margin in the fixed operation side and how that's kind of evolved and changed their business. And they're seeing that kind of retail revenue or retail net kind of shrink, and that fixed operations grow along with F&I, which I think is indicative of the business overall. I think back to the saying, though, the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's some constants that have changed throughout that as well. What is kind of that thread of kind of consistency as you think back to your kind of experience?
Passionate people. I think at the end of the day, this is an emotional transaction. Buying a vehicle is, regardless of which emotion you're feeling, it's an emotional transaction, and it's one or two people selling to one or two people, one vehicle at a time.
Yep.
On the distributor side or the OEM side, a lot of times at the end of the month we count in the aggregate, but at the retail level, these transactions happen one at a time. And there's starting to be a lot of influence of what we call digital retailing, and people starting to do a lot online that they historically did in person. But I think you still have a high degree of salesmanship going on out there, and people who are coming to a transaction in an area that they don't have total comfort in, and they need someone to walk them through and answer their questions and remove some of the mystery. And from day one of my time in the car business, that hasn't really changed at all.
Are you? And I'm interested because I think it's timely. The inventory shortage and kind of the impact to dealers. In some ways, there's a watch out that it's impacting the salesmanship and potentially creating bad habits. Is that kind of a fair assumption, like in today's environment on that retail floor?
I think there's there's the potential for bad habits. Let's say that. I think what we always need to be doing on anything, because this business is so cyclical and a new cycle is right around the corner. Yep. You need to stay vigilant, and you have to make sure that you do stay sharp. I think the other thing that dealers, and we talk to a lot of our dealers and managers about this all the time, is a lot of folks live in a 30-day cycle, not just in the sales cycle, but with their personal finances as well. Yep. And people are making a lot more money than they have, in the last, let's say in 2021, a little bit in 2020, but in 2021, people are making a lot more money on a monthly basis than they used to. And what we need to realize is that too will probably pass. Mm-hmm. And I hope that folks are either getting some personal financial counseling or making sure that they're saving a good bit of these big paychecks right now, because paychecks in the end are probably going to normalize a little bit further down the road.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's setting aside when it rains, set aside for a rainy day. The rainy day is got to get it set up. Danny, what are some of your thoughts there as we kind of explore that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the chip shortage and inventory, that's top of mind. And, you can't get on an automotivenews.com and read, the first page without reading something, an opinion or some forward-looking article about how that's playing out. And Ed, I'm curious, I think we all anticipate that ship will sail at some point and the inventory will come back, right? What are you seeing in your sight lines in terms of how that's going to play out and what dealers should be thinking about kind of in the long term?
I'm seeing a lot of fog in my sight lines. I'm seeing a lot of things that I thought were fact, that because this, I think the most overused word in 2021 is fluid. And I think I'm going to say it one more time. I think this thing is so incredibly fluid. And you think about what were the drivers of this. And in 2020, when the pandemic was this giant unknown, but one of the things that we saw is a lot of people were staying at home. And when the car business was trying to figure out what it was going to be, I think OEMs and dealers kind of throttled back on orders. And at the same time, people were staying home and they're consuming, home electronics so much greater that a lot of these chips went to television sets and other things instead of to cars. And now, as we got to mid 2020 and we saw that, demand really hadn't gone away and people were buying vehicles, and now the demand has continued, but the chip shortage is now probably much more impacted, not just by a lot of industries looking to have microchips, but the fact that companies that make microchips are, suffering from, COVID. We thought back in early July, Toyota's done a super job. They have a lot of different tiers of suppliers, and they diversify a lot. And we truly thought we were out of the woods on the microchip issue. We thought picking up in August and going through the end of the year, everything was going to, supply was probably going to come back close to matching demand. And literally, it was 3 weeks later, we're in Malaysia, in Vietnam, went into really the first wave of COVID they had. They missed the first few waves, and we saw, we were in a situation a month or two ago where it was probably just as bad as April 2020, and maybe even a little bit worse because the situation was still a little cloudy. Now it looks to be improving. And we think we will see gradual improvement going forward. But what hasn't gone away is the demand. A lot of our customers didn't necessarily lose their jobs; they lost their freedom. So they were getting paid, but they couldn't go anywhere to spend the money. And then on top of that, the government was sending them more money. So
sign me up.
And as Americans, when we get a victory, we like to celebrate. And a lot of the ways we like to celebrate is buying things. Cars is near the top of the list.
Yep.
So I think we're going to see this demand, some craziness down the road notwithstanding. I think we're going to see this demand continue well into 2022. And supply will start to catch up, but I think demand will still outstrip supply well through next year. We're looking at ending the year with dealer stocks maybe 1/10 to what a normal December month-end dealer stock total aggregate SET would look like in what you might used to call a normal year. And next year, we see the numbers being a little higher, but we don't see them being a lot higher. I think we'll still end the year next year with dealer stock somewhere in the range of 25% of what used to be normal. So things will get good and they'll stay good, but we will not see what we would consider normal supply for 12 months plus. And that assumes, of course, that demand stays at the level it is today.
Do you anticipate some sort of shift a little bit it seems to be a good environment for dealers, good environment for consumers, good environment for manufacturers, OEMs. Do you anticipate a shift in kind of how the vehicles traditionally are stocked, ordered, and kind of supplied to a dealer? And I don't know what the right balance is, but there seems to be some positive, some silver lining to some of this for some of the stakeholders.
I think, you don't have to look far to find the silver lining on the retail side. We used to think there have been, I've been in the business a long time. We've always talked about what is an ideal day supply, right? What's the perfect inventory to work out of? And, on vehicles that have a lot of models, take a full-size truck, dealers want a ton of truck inventory. So let's say the perfect model was somewhere between 45 and 60 days. And when you started to get above 60, it wasn't ideal. We found that, in peak months, historically, we found we could work somewhere in the 30-day supply. Now, who knew that 4-day supply was actually ideal? And things will not stay at 4-day supply. Yeah. But I imagine that as things return, we're all learning lessons. Yep. There's nobody, the retailer, the wholesaler, no one likes too many vehicles. The manufacturer's building the vehicles with the intent that they're going to sell and move through the cycle. And when they don't, it costs the manufacturer incremental marketing dollars to move the vehicles. And it costs the dealers a lot of incremental dollars to keep them on their lots. So we all want to find what is the perfect balance. And I imagine since the inventory started 110 years ago or so, we've all been looking for what is the perfect balance. But yeah, I think this is a learning game, and we're all learning a lot right now.
Yeah. I'd love to just kind of pivot the business away from business a little bit, or around the corner from business. You have had a very successful career in retail automotive space, and what are some things that you're kind of most proud of as you kind of reflect back on your career?
Survival.
Yeah.
Um, I got my current job in mid July 2008. 2 weeks later, gas was over $4 a gallon for the very first time. Great Recession showed up. Lehman
Yep.
Brothers crashed. We had, this was a time when SUVs and pickup trucks were red hot in June, and in November we couldn't sell them. And we got through that. Toyota had some really tough media-driven recall issues for a while. We had an earthquake and a tsunami in Japan that we got through. So I would say my first 3 or 4 years in this role, I survived, and
Yeah.
the last couple of years in this role haven't been, it hasn't been a birthday every day. So, I think what's great about this business and what attracted me to this business is no 2 days are ever the same. You don't get bored in the car business, and we certainly haven't been bored the last couple of years.
No.
And I'm proud. I think all of us we're proud of leading, and no one's. Well, let's say everybody's proud of their successes, and success has a thousand fathers, a thousand mothers. Failure only one, but I think we get our greatest lessons from failure.
Yeah.
And if we can survive the failures and walk away and learn something that prepares us for the next crisis, then that's good. And I learned a ton coming through the recession and some of the other stuff. So when the pandemic hit, yeah, it was an unknown, but it wasn't insurmountable. And I figured we'd find a way through, and we have. So I'm really proud of that. Proud of the relationships that I've built with our SET dealers over 22 years. I think, we at SET, we want to believe that we walk the talk. And I think by and large, our dealers believe that too. And then I'm really proud of the team that we've built at SET. I think as leaders, our job is ultimately to replace ourselves. You have to, you want to try and leave things better than you found them, which means you got to have people coming behind you that are going to be better than you were. And, I think that's the mark of success. And I think we've got a great leadership team ready to step up at SET after I'm gone. And I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, and certainly it's something to hang your hat on. As you think about, or did you have any any career advice for maybe somebody that's kind of young and starting out in the business? And it's not lost on me that I think about kind of, we talked earlier about fluid and the dealer body being fluid, and then you talked about survival, and there is this kind of resiliency that's kind of baked into kind of retail automotive. But as you think about navigating some of that, is there any career advice you would give someone kind of starting out that they could think about to kind of use as a guiding light in their career?
I think the advice I give all of our new field people here at SET, in fact, a lot of our new hires here, and it served me well most of the time, is 2 ears and 1 mouth. You arrive, you kind of think you know a lot. You realize very quickly that there are always people that know more, and listen a lot more than you talk. Learn something new every day. And become a student not only of the industry, but become a student of business. I try and get our folks to, read the Wall Street Journal every day, even if you only skim it. Find a couple of good business publications that deal with things that aren't related to the automotive industry, because guess what? Everything impacts everything else. So, whether it's the oil industry and its impact on gas prices, or who knew the microchip industry someday would have an impact on the car business. Everything has a downstream effect, and the more that we can become learners, have a learning mindset, and try and find outside sources to inform our decisions, I think we become more valuable assets to our customers.
Yeah,
I imagine
I
some
think
of
that's
that
great.
also applies to dealers too, and everything that's happening in the world with, and like we started the conversation, kind of not only are the vehicles getting more sophisticated, but the process is getting more
Yeah.
sophisticated. And we were actually talking yesterday on kind of a similar note, in the scheme of things, what percentage of cars are being sold totally online today? But when you think about it, just 20 years ago, 25 years ago, what percentage of books were being sold online, right? So we're going to get there at some point. And I imagine that like constant learner mindset has got to apply. I'm curious, that same question, but applied to, the dealers listening to this. What would you leave kind of as wisdom to them and your thoughts there?
I'll tell you that I think the thing that impresses me most about dealers is their unbelievable ability to adapt to change. They really, these are really sharp entrepreneurs by and large who have invested their fortunes in their business, and they stay really close to things and they adapt really quickly. And my advice to them is clearly just to continue to do that, because you're absolutely right. Regardless of how many vehicles are being sold online today, the absolute truth is that 10 years from now, it'll be more. And, and at that point, there'll be new technology coming into play too. So I think the advice that I give our folks, the same advice I give retail folks, is be students, be learners, and be willing to break your model to reinvest yourself. One of these things I learned in some class in school years ago is, cannibalizing yourself is okay because it's better than having someone else eat.
Yeah.
And, all that means is you got to be willing to, you can't fall in love with stuff once it starts to change. It's like a used car, right? At a certain point, that thing's getting stale and it's time to fall out of love and break up with it and give someone else a shot. And I think that applies to everything we do in our industry.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Being a student of your craft, student of the business. I think in closing, I guess I'm curious. You're Ed, a performance guy. I've always been kind of where's the bar and how do we get past it? As you begin to look towards some personal goals and things in retirement, any goals you have set and what you're looking forward to?
So we had this kind of impromptu, or maybe it was not impromptu for anybody but me. We had all of our SET dealers together in Miami this week. We had 147 dealers there. First time we've all gotten together since July of 2019.
Wow.
And the last night, there was a little retirement party for me. I hate surprises. I hate being the center of attention. I like flying below the radar. And it was the last thing I wanted, and I completely loved it. And there was one point in the middle of it where there was a video, and dealers were asked to describe me in one word. And one dealer kind of hit the nail on the head. This is a long answer to your question. He said sandbagger. He said, nah, I would describe it as a sandbagger, but the truth is he's just not that good at golf.
Right.
And so one of my retirement aspirations is I want to get good at golf.
Yeah.
We had the Toyota dealer show a month or so ago in Las Vegas, and people were saying, what are you going to do? You're going to get bored. That's another aspiration of mine. I can't wait to be bored. I want to be bored. I want to wake up on a Monday, not looking at the sky, wondering what the hell is going to happen today. So boredom is part of it. I want to travel more. And, surely I want to keep my mind sharp. So I'm going to try and learn Italian. And I think that'll be my start. And then I'll take it from there.
Well, I think, thank you for joining us. I think those are some great goals. I look forward to hearing about your golf scores and how you get that handicap.
It's really good. I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm going to surprise them.
That's right. You're one of these guys keeps two handicaps,
No, I'm not.
You post all the scores?
Guys, I don't even hit 2 balls off the first tee.
Just let it rip. No breakfast balls.
They'll leave it out.
Well, here's to fairways and greens and 2 putts in your retirement. I appreciate you joining us, Ed, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. And thanks for doing it. And forget my retirement. Here's to the last 2 months of 2021. Let's go out on an incredible high note, and let's do it again in 2022.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.